Hello everyone and welcome back to Fabiano Caruana's legendary run of 2014 in the Sinquefield Cup. This is round 3 and here he faces world champion Magnus Carlsen. Now for those of you who have maybe only gotten into chess recently or maybe during COVID times, Magnus Carlsen was already incredibly strong in 2014. He already defeated Viswanathan Anand to become the world champion. That happened in 2013 and this is played in August and in November Magnus will defend his World Chess Championship title again against Viswanathan Anand in Sochi in Russia. And well, obviously he is extremely well prepared and he is the highest rated player in the world at the time this game took place. So let's check it out. Fabi coming off of great 2 victories against Veselin Topalov and Maxim Vasylegrad. Magnus on the other hand started with 2 draws. Let's see what happened in this one. Magnus with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5 by Fabi, bishop to c4. Magnus opts for the bishop opening to take Fabi out of his preparation, perhaps a little bit. Knight f6, d3, and pawn to c6. Preparing to strike with d5. We have knight to f3 and pawn to d5. Bishop back to b3 and bishop to b4 with check. And now this has all been played before, even in 2014, so nothing new being played here. c3, bishop back to d6, and bishop to g5, pinning the knight. We have d captures on e4, d captures, and pawn to h6. Chasing away the bishop, we have bishop to h4, and queen to e7. As you can see, I've included the clock times for this video. For some reason it just wouldn't load the clock times for the previous game. Knight b to d2 and knight b to d7. Okay, there are a couple of games that reach this position, but after bishop to g3 it is now, as of move 11, that this position has never been reached again. We have bishop to c7 and castles kingside. Now this castles is the first thing by Magnus, and you'll see why it probably took him 12 minutes to decide for castles here. We have knight to h5 by Fabi, putting pressure on the bishop and also maybe preparing to put the knight on f4, and Magnus plays pawn to h3. This took him another 15 minutes to decide. Already he's down to 57 minutes on the clock, and the idea is that, okay, he controls this diagonal with the bishop. If he gets the semi-open f-file for the rook, could be very nice. And Fabi decides that it is good for him. Knight captures on g3, also a fairly longish thing. F captures on g3, and now you might think, okay, let's play knight f6, as the rook and bishop are a powerful duo. And also, if you're wondering, what if we just castle kingside here? Well, then you go knight to h4, and then the knight comes to f5, and then it's really annoying. Also, knight to g6 is the immediate threat as the f7 pawn is pinned. But here, Fabi plays knight to c5. He has something different planned. He puts pressure on the bishop, and Magnus does not tuck away the bishop, but instead we have bishop captures on f7. And this is where things get incredibly interesting. Now, you can't really capture with the queen. If you capture with the queen after knight captures on e5, and the double attack, your best option is to just give up the queen for rook, because if you allow Magnus the control of this diagonal, it's just over. Like queen to e6, queen to h5 with check, there is nothing more to be done here. King e7 or any other move, knight g6 check, you're gonna lose the rook, and there's, okay, not much to be done here. This rook is coming to d1, the black king can no longer castle. You're not even getting that rook into the game. This will be over fairly quickly. So after bishop captures on f7, Fabi plays king captures on f7, boldly stepping in front of the rook on f1, and Magnus plays knight captures on e5 with a double check. Probably going to use this for a thumbnail. And now king to g8. This is definitely the way to go, because these are your only options. And if you go king to e6, which looks clever, this is met with queen g4 check, king captures, and knight c4 checkmate. So there's that. So after knight captures on e5, king to g8 by Fabi, and now knight to g6. So okay, Magnus will win the rook on h8, and Fabi's king will be stuck on g8, sort of. But okay, let's see what happens. Queen to g5 by Fabi, putting pressure on that g3 pawn, and if you can capture on g3 and play queen to h2 check, could be very difficult for Magnus to get out of that one. So here, rook to f8 with check. King to h7, and now how does Magnus continue here? Does he play rook captures on h8 or knight captures on h8? Both moves have their merits, because if you could play rook captures on h8, and in the game knight captures on h8 was played, if you drive the king all the way to g6, it looks like, I mean, there's probably stuff you can do here. On knight f3, you attack the queen, queen captures, okay, but the knight is covering h2. You have time for other moves, but not really. For example, if pawn to e5, you're cutting off the bishop and the queen, it doesn't really work. Bishop captures on h3, and already your mate is being threatened. Also, the rook on h8 will be lost, so this is just a winning for Fabi. And on the other hand, after queen captures on g3, if you trade queens, yes, you can do that, like queen captures, rook captures, and now it's going to be two bishops versus a rook. And you might not lose this, but it's going to be very, very difficult. I don't know. If I'm playing against the bishop pair and my opponent is pushing, somehow the bishop pair always prevails. It's just so hard to defend. So that's what happens if rook captures on h8. Magnus decided for knight captures on h8, and now the game is very, very complicated. Fabi goes bishop to g4. Attacks the queen, and seemingly offering the bishop is threatening the rook on f8. So Magnus just defends it. Queen to f1, nicely defending the rook on f8, and the rook is defending the knight on h8. And now, how can you continue here? Well, Fabi played something really, really wonderful. Knight to d3 is what Fabi played, but just to give you an example, what happens after rook captures, queen captures, and something like bishop to e6, as this is the top move recommended by the engine. Let's say knight to f1, you defend on g3, and now queen to d8. Okay, you offer a queen trade, and now we might have some sort of an endgame like this. Captures, captures, and after something like this, defending on e4, king captures on h8, and you will again have two bishops versus a rook, where it's enough for a win. In this particular endgame, most likely it is. But Fabi went for knight to d3. He's now offering the knight to capture the rook on f8, and it's very, very hard to find a move here. I'm just going to give you a couple of options because this position is so complicated. Now, what's the threat behind knight to d3? Let's say we play a move your uncle would play. Let's say pawn to a3. Well, then the idea is that after rook captures and queen captures, there's this very nasty queen to e3 check. And now with the option of going knight to f2 check next, you can't really play king to h1, but you can't really play king to h2 either, because the queen captures on g3. So let's say you play king to h1, knight to f2 with check, king to h2, queen captures on g3 check, king g1 only move, and now knight captures with check. As the g2 pawn is pinned, king f1, queen d3 check, and after king e1, this will be checkmate. So that is the threat behind the move knight to d3 if Magnus just plays an uncle move. But let's say you don't play. Let's say you don't play an uncle move. Let's say you play the strongest move, and that is knight to g6, which was not played in the game. I'm just going to show it to you because it's really, really cool. So, okay, now the idea is that if rook captures, the knight is defending, and you can capture on f8 with check. So what happens if king captures on g6? Well, if king captures on g6, then it's the immediate draw. Queen f7 check, king h7, and you can just repeat this to a perpetual. But the real idea after knight to g6 is what happens if queen to e3 check now? Well, okay, king to h1, now queen captures on g3, but now pawn to e5, and now the knight from g6 is also defending on e5, and now it's extremely complicated. Now you have to play rook captures on f8, and black is only slightly better, because if you capture the knight now, then it's queen f7 check, king to h7, queen to g8 check, king to g6, and now there's rook to f6 with check. The pawn on e5 allows that. You don't have king captures on f6 like you would if the pawn was on e4, and now after king to h5, you just checkmated the black king. Rook captures on h6 being the threat, and if knight to f2 with check, rook captures on f2, you also cannot capture because queen captures on g4 will be checkmate. So you're going to have to play something like bishop captures on e5, and then h captures on g4, queen captures, and queen captures on e5 with check. Black is getting checkmated within a few moves, and also you're down a full rook and the knight. So that's only some of the options that are possible after knight to d3. But Magnus decides against all of that. He plays queen captures on d3. He does give it some 13 minutes, to decide. Rook captures on f8, and now h captures on g4. And now queen captures on g4. King captures on h8 is also possible. He goes queen captures on g4. And now just knight to f3. We have queen captures on g3, and now how do you continue this position? It's a really tough one, and Magnus could still probably play this out to a draw, but he played pawn to e5 and opened up a discovery. The real move here after queen captures on g3, and not an easy one to spot, is knight to f7. And it's even hard to understand why, but the point is that now the knight has freed itself, and once black captures it, as that's what you have to do, now you play pawn to e5 check, and after pawn to g6 you play pawn to a4, preparing pawn to a5 to stop bishop to b6 check, and if bishop captures on e5, as there is nothing but bishop to b6 check, just king h1, there's, I mean, no real danger there. So the real idea is that if bishop captures on e5, knight captures and queen captures, you can simply play rook to f1, and there's nothing really to worry about here. So after queen captures on g3, Magnus played pawn to e5 check right away, and now Fabi just played king captures on h8, and how do you continue? Well, Magnus played pawn to e6. So you have this position against that one that we've just discussed, and now Fabi's position is completely winning, and you know, having the previous line that we've discussed under consideration, you probably know why that is so. But just in case you don't, feel free to pause the video and take down the #1 rated player in the world, Magnus Carlsen, even in 2014, while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this brilliancy, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to b6 with check. Yes, all of the great ones start with check, and all of the simple ones also. So you might be thinking, how does one miss such an idea? Well, it's you know, it's just something that happens in chess. Magnus missed it probably due to the time on the clock and due to the fact that he was also trying to win this game. But yeah, you cannot go to f1, as queen to f2 is checkmate, and after king to h1, there's the very nasty queen to g4. Probably the move that Magnus missed, because now what's the threat? Well, the threat is not so much queen to h5 check, even though the bishop is covering the g1 square, because you can always block with the knight. The real trick is that after, let's say, a move is played, that the bishop, any move, let's say pawn to a3 is played, the bishop covers the d8 square, you're going to play rook to d8 with tempo as it attacks the queen, then you go rook d8, rook d5, and rook to h5. So that's the threat. So Magnus tried to avoid this by playing queen to d6. He wants to have the option of going queen to b8 check just in the right moment, but it does not help him. Rook to d8 attacks the queen, queen to e5, rook to d5 attacks the queen, queen to b8 with check, and now king to h7 and pawn to e7, acting like nothing is happening, and he's probably mind-tricking Fabi here into going rook to h5 check. And indeed, if he goes rook to h5 check, knight h2 defense, and there's nothing Fabi can do. But Fabi doesn't fall for it. Queen to h5 with check, and now after knight to h2, there's the very nasty rook to d1 with check. This wins a piece, and there is no coming back from that. Rook captures on d1, we have queen captures on d1 with check, knight to f1, queen captures on f1, and after king to h2, sidestepping check, there is queen to g1, and he was in this position on move 34 that Magnus Carlsen resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once the king moves, let's say king g3, there's queen to e3 check, and once any move is played, really, you're just going to capture on e7, and that's it. No e7 pawn, no captures on b7, no counterplay. Magnus is down a pawn and a full bishop, so of course he just resigns here. So incredible game. Not just the game, incredible start, incredible tournament for Fabi, first taking down Veselin Topalov, then Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, and now in round 3, Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces. I mean, it wasn't any sort of a preparation. If anything, Magnus was the better prepared player here. Fabi was just playing much better moves here. And someone wrote on my in the comments of my previous video that you know, after such a start and after such an incredible performance, Fabi actually learned from a person that was close to him that there was talk between some of the players of even the possibility of Fabi using external assistance here, because such I mean, such level of play against such competition, and I also didn't mention this in any of my previous videos, this was the strongest tournament ever held, even by today's standards in terms of rating. This was an incredible super tournament, and Fabi was just destroying everyone. Like I said, no, sorry, that's the different tournament. Fabi actually finished this tournament 3 full points ahead of Magnus Carlsen. A classical event where someone finishes 3 full points ahead of Magnus Carlsen. will definitely, bring up some suspicion. But yeah, I mean, it was all shut down. It was completely unsubstantial, and I mean, Fabi just played incredible chess here. But yeah, I mean, you start playing well, people will start to talk regardless of who you are. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Brilliant stuff by Fabi. We're gonna continue this beautiful run of the Sinquefield Cup 2014. Hope you're enjoying it, and yeah, I'm looking very much forward to covering it in its entirety, and even some of the other games maybe that were not played by Fabi, as it is such a beautiful event, and I've never covered, I think, even a single game from the event. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. I would like to thank Robert Stadelman, Andrei Schrade, Robert Palandek, GersnyChessFestival.org.gg, and Frank V.H. Schaefer for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Sinquefield Cup 2014 until we're done with it, and very much looking forward to the upcoming Hans versus Magnus match. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day, and I might even stream that one. See you soon.